Well, the secret was, let's begin to use some of these new machine tools that are starting to show up. Machines that could now begin at least to cut the contour of the stock of a rifle so that you didn't have to carve it by hand. Simple milling machines that could begin to form a lock plate for a rifle. A simple lathe that might be able now to turn a barrel instead of forging a barrel.
By 1843, after years of trial and error, the firm had finally perfected machine tools that adhered to tolerances needed to make interchangeable gun parts. They received a government contract to produce 10,000 rifles. The faster they made the guns, the more money they made. It was great incentive.
The technology all comes together, and these 10,000 rifles they produce for the government, every nut, bolt, and screw, every component part is interchangeable one gun to the next, and not with any sloppiness in the tolerances, but beautiful, fine fit and finish. The government's thrilled. I mean, they finally have got interchangeability, this quest they'd been after for so many years.
The moment marked the beginning of a manufacturing revolution. Other gun-making firms, including the government's own armories in Springfield, Massachusetts and Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, quickly followed suit.
It's the period between 1815 and 1864 that you begin to see the germination of this new technology that's based on the introduction of machine tools and the introduction of precision measuring devices that culminates in this tremendous production that takes place, and not just at the Springfield Armory, it's the entire American firearms industry.
Kendall, Robbins, and Lawrence continued to lead the field. In 1851, they traveled to London to display their guns at the Crystal Palace World Exhibition.
Now, their display consisted of nothing more than taking 6 of these Mississippi rifles over there, disassembling them, scrambling the parts around, and then reassembling them. The British went berserk. They couldn't do that. The only analogy would be the reaction that we had back when the Russians launched Sputnik.
Kendall, Robbins, and Lawrence agreed to make guns for the British. When the Crimean War broke out in 1853, they were given an order to produce 25,000 Enfield mini rifles at a cost of $25 each. Once finished with that, there would be another order for 60,000 additional rifles. The contract contained a penalty clause if the firm didn't deliver on time.
It was like a black cloud. Everything imaginable that could go wrong with the production of these guns goes wrong. Really silly things, like the wood for the stocks of these Enfield rifles came from Pennsylvania. There's a drought. All the little sawmills shut down. They can't get any wood for the stocks for a whole summer. The gauges that they requested be sent over from England were made out of hardwood, and on the sea voyage over, they split open. Robbins and Lawrence had to make their own set of steel gauges. So it was one delay after the other.
By the time the Crimean War ended in 1856, Kendall, Robbins, and Lawrence had delivered only 14,000 rifles of the initial order. The British government sued. The company went bankrupt, and in order to satisfy creditors, the firm's factory became property of the English Crown. Ironically, one of the most innovative gun manufacturers had been put out of business on the eve of the most concentrated push toward mass production of guns the world had ever seen, the American Civil War.
Imagine that at the beginning of the Civil War, some regiments were going into battle still carrying smoothbore, flintlock muskets left over from the Revolutionary War period. By the end of the Civil War, the repeater is developed. The cartridge, the modern cartridge, exactly the same as we use today, has been invented. Even the principle of the machine gun, the Gatling gun, had been laid out. So all of this happens just during the period of the Civil War. A technological change in firearms that is probably as dramatic as the technological changes that we're seeing with computers today.
No sooner had manufacturers perfected their ability to mass produce finely made handguns and rifles than the war ended. With no battles to fight, the government no longer needed hundreds of thousands of new guns every year. Except for a handful of major manufacturers, the firearms industry withered and all but died. The Kendall, Robbins and Lawrence factory in Vermont, which had supplied guns to the Union during the war, was refitted to make sewing machines. The Remington Firearms Company, which made rifles and revolvers, retooled its gun-making machines and later made typewriters.